I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. Prosecutors and defense attorneys have spent 2 days arguing before a judge over video in a rape case involving former members of Ballet San Antonio that has still yet to see opening arguments. I'm joined now by San Antonio Express News courts reporter Elizabeth Zavala to discuss these ongoing issues over video evidence and to preview the soon-to-begin trial. So, Liz, great to have you back here on the podcast as always. Let's start with those accusations that are at the heart of this case.
Yes, Chance. Good to be back. This is a very interesting case. These are allegations against Hugo Rodriguez, who once was a rising star in Ballet San Antonio. Now, just to tell you a little bit about Ballet San Antonio, this is a nonprofit organization and the resident ballet company at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts in downtown San Antonio. So in April of 2016, Rodriguez was indicted by a Bexar County grand jury after a fellow dancer accused him of rape. Now, basically, what we know about how this originated was that Rodriguez and his accuser, and, just so that you know, the San Antonio Express News doesn't print or say the names of victims in alleged cases of sexual assault. So I'll refer to her as the accuser or the victim. So we found that Rodriguez, at some point in March of 2016, went out with a drink with a friend, and ended up at the apartment of his coworker, who actually was asleep. And Rodriguez is accused of getting into the house by the roommate of the victim, because he said he had slept over once before. And since they had been drinking, the thought here is that maybe he just needed a place to crash or something. But his accuser says that she woke up to him raping her. She told him to stop, and he told authorities that he did, and he left. So sometime later on, a second accuser came forward, and that's when a couple of months ago, the Express News wrote the story about the accusations against Rodriguez.
So, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, Elizabeth, there's been a delay. Tell me about when the trial was supposed to start and what has pushed the trial back slightly. And we'll get into some of those details.
Well, they were expected to begin Tuesday of this week, Chance. They seated the jury late Monday night. And I was in court along with other people there in the 175th State District Court, which the presiding judge is Catherine Torres-Stahl. And immediately as the trial was supposed to begin, the jurors were actually lined up, I believe, to come into court. And there was a bench conference with James Tochi, who is Rodriguez's defense attorney, and his second chair, Kelly McGinnis, and prosecutors Anna Scott and her second chair, Clinton Malloy, were talking to the judge. And the defense told the judge that at the very last second, that prosecutors, and the word that Mr. Tochi used is dumped 27 hours of body camera video from San Antonio police right before the trial was to begin. So you can only imagine the frustration and displeasure from defense attorneys.
So, Elizabeth, I know in the past we've talked about different cases where one side or even both sides will complain about getting information too late. That's even led to a mistrial in a case that we've talked about before. So tell me about the specific details of this, because this is always very interesting to me. What has to be given to which side by a certain amount of time? Is there any wiggle room? Are these rules very, very specific? And how does that play into this case?
Well, it's a lot of technical stuff usually, but what happens in these cases is one side, the defense will allege that prosecutors have withheld information. They basically call it a discovery violation. So when the state gets things like cell phone records, medical records, and also in this case, we've got the usual thing of interviews with the defendant, interviews with the alleged victims that are all caught on video. And it began Tuesday morning as 5 hours of video from body cameras that Mr. Tochi said Mr. Malloy did not turn over to them. But what we found out in court, actually, after the judge gave them a couple of hours of a recess to watch this video, it actually ended up being 27 additional hours of video that showed police interviewing the dancer, some of her witnesses, and also another body camera from another officer who showed several hours of the defendant. So they argued about that as we were in court today. This is the second day that they are now arguing, and Judge Torres Stahl was so upset yesterday that she said that she was going to give them a little more time after Mr. Tochi had asked for more time. This was a very heated exchange outside the hearing of jurors when Mr. Tochi accusers of misconduct, because they weren't told about the additional video earlier. And then there were also hospital and cell phone records that they wanted to take a look at. So again, I said Judge Torres Stahl was not very happy about it, but she did give them more time. And today they started arguing again.
You're listening to The Docket, a new weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com, brought to you by our sponsor, the law offices of Pat Maloney. And so when they started their arguments again today, what was the development there?
Well, apparently, more heated exchanges this morning in front of Judge Torres Stahl after her docket call. Apparently, there was more video that was sent to the defense at about 1:30 this morning. So Mr. Tochi was extremely upset. He said, I had two things that were sent to me at midnight and then at 1 that has additional information that we didn't know about. And, the accusations began flying again. That, Mr. Tochi is saying that had they known about the additional videos, had they known about the interviews that were shown on those, had they known about the hospital and cell phone records, he would have done things differently in strategizing his case with his client, and also the way that they picked the jury. They go through this thing, which, picking a jury, the fancy phrase for it is called voir dire. And when they do that, they will ask all kinds of questions for potential jurors, that involve their feelings about all kinds of things. It can be, things like, has anyone in your family ever been sexually assaulted? Have you ever been a victim of sexual assault? Can you decide these cases based upon your experience, or, they'll ask them all kinds of questions. So, he was extremely adamant 2 days ago and today, Mr. Tochi, that he needed more time he and his team needed more time to look at all of the information that is before them. And, there is an option for them to ask the judge to declare a mistrial and come back and try it later. But they're so far down the path here with already choosing the jury, and they were already ready to come into the room. So if they would have a mistrial, they would ask for one with prejudice, which means that they can always come back and try it again. But I think it's the state, Anna Scott, was adamant in saying we didn't do anything wrong. There's no misconduct here, and she said that she immediately informed the defense as soon as she realized that there was extra video. Now, you might wonder, how come these sides aren't talking to each other? I mean, it really is, you've got so many agencies involved. You've got San Antonio police, you've got prosecutors, you've got a defense team, you've got investigators, you've got all these people that are gathering all kinds of information. But, I mean, it became so heated that, you were hearing from both sides things like, well, it's not my responsibility to get the flash drive to get you your video. You can get a flash drive and you can get it yourself. This is prosecutors to the defense before the judge. And then Mr. Tochi, defense, saying, I've never been told that before. We have always gotten what we need from the state. They hand us a disc, they will hand us a flash drive, they will do that sort of thing. So, this was all happening before Judge Torres Saul.
Unfortunately, Elizabeth, these really do seem like trivial details, at least particularly the last one that you spoke of. How unfortunate that that's an issue in a case that's so important like this. Even with these just being accusations at this point, these are really important accusations that need to be taken seriously. And to hear something like that, I have to admit, is very disappointing. Is there any way that you think they'll get past this and the trial might begin sometime soon?
Well, Judge Torres Saul was, again, I said, I've used words to describe her as not being happy, how things have developed. She appeared very exasperated, actually, at many points as she was listening to the lawyers argue. But, she wanted specifically to know when the state knew about information and when they gave it away. They were given answers. She was given answers this morning that, with dates, but the bottom line for her is that she said, I am not happy and I am going to give you more time, she said, to the defense. And she said that she's going to have the jury on hold and have them actually come back on October 29th. So that gives them a little bit more time, the defense, that is, to pore over records and cell phone downloads and videos to, prepare to defend Hugo Rodriguez on these sexual assault allegations. So basically what happens now is that anybody who was in from out of town to testify for the state or even to testify for the defense is basically going to have to come back, on October 29th to hopefully hear this case.
And thanks to San Antonio Express News courts reporter Elizabeth Zavala, as always, for joining me for today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you by the law offices of Pat Maloney. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.